The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. Thrilled to be here with you on this Wednesday morning. We got a lot that we're going to cover in the next 2 hours. You know that Wednesday is my favorite morning of the week because we start out the show with Ask Dr. Doreen. Normally we have Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh here with us, and before you all go, oh no, she said normally, because a lot of times in the past when Dr. Granpeesheh has had to be away, we've played an oldie but a goodie, but we're not going to do that this morning. In fact, Dr. Granpeesheh herself said, you know what, I'm going to send in somebody, you know how like you send in the pitch hitter and it's somebody who's spectacular. So we are going to be joined in just a second by Evelyn Kung. She's going to be with us. She is the clinical lead here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. You can already see her hand sneaking into the shot here. She's here and she's going to answer your questions live. So we've had her on the show before, but we've not had her in this format, and believe me, it's going to be fabulous, so stick with us for that. And then in the second hour today for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy's going to be here with me, Nancy Allspaw Jackson, and we're going to be talking about the upcoming event, Denim and Diamonds, that's happening on this Sunday, but we've got two amazing guests that are going to be with us. First of all, Adam Irving. He is the director of a film called Off the Rails about a gentleman who's on the spectrum serving time in jail for his compulsion, which is taking over trains and buses in the New York metro area. It is a story that you will not believe. It's a true story, amazing documentary, and the director is going to be here with us. And then also we're going to be joined by Marguerite Ellisofan. I hope I'm saying her last name right. She is the author of My Picture Perfect Family. She had twins, and here's a different twist, right? A boy and a girl. We've heard this story before, and one of them is on the spectrum, but in her case, it's her daughter who's on the spectrum. Her son is not, and her book is all about the trials and tribulations that she went through with her daughter, who recently graduated from college. We love to hear those stories. Okay, so that's going to be our show, plus some amazing news. We've got an update on the new mission statement from Autism Speaks. All of that's going to be coming up in the second hour. But as I mentioned in the first hour, we've got an amazing guest for the first time in this format. Before we get to her, though, I want to remind everybody that this entire 2 hours live is meant to be interactive. We want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your feelings, your concerns, and your questions. So you can be writing those in on the live feature right now. I'm going to remind you of some of the different ways that you can participate, and so is Samantha. She's going to show them to you on the screen. I want to, again, reiterate that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, lots of things to do. You can click on the triangle that's on the computer screen, and that will start the live show. If you're watching us recorded, it will start the most recent recorded show. You can click on the memo tab in the upper left-hand corner, and that will allow you to see the 100 most recent shows. If you want to go further back into our archives, you can do that on any one of the things that Samantha is showing you on the screen right now. But remember, when you're on the home page, there's something that we fondly call the live feature. If you will put your cursor in the box that says your question, all you have to do is type and hit enter. You do have to hit enter, but you don't have to get out a credit card. You don't have to remember a password or your username or a code or any. You don't have to have a coupon. It's free. It's totally free. It's totally anonymous. And you can write whatever you want in there, hit enter, and it shows up here on my screen. So not only can you be talking to me, but you can be talking to our experts, and we really enjoy having that feature. All right, my friends, normally I would say to you, it's time for Ask Dr. Doreen, but as I cheated and told you Dr. Granpeche can't be here today, but in her place, we have the wonderful, the fabulous Evelyn Kung, and you're the clinical lead, clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. She has been working in this field for more than 2 decades, approaching 3 decades. A wealth of experience. I always talk about what a great expert Dr. Doreen Granpeche is, but if we were going to have anybody to take her place, I would want to have you. So thank you so much. And we love you always bring a fresh perspective that you are also one of the most empathetic people that I have ever met, which is a wonderful thing. So we do like to remind everyone at the start of the show that there is no expert that in this format could give individual specific advice. But having said that, we're going to throw some questions at her and right here, and we're going to hear some suggestions about things that you might want to consider. It helps you to have a better, richer decision tree when you hear some of the things that our experts have to share. So thank you, first of all, for being here.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
I assure you it is our pleasure and a thrill. I know everybody likes to watch reruns, but it's nothing like when it's live. So I'm going to jump right in here. We had a bunch of questions that came in the last 48 hours, but remember, you guys can be writing in on the live feature, and we'll be checking in on that as well. Okay. Hello. I suspect my daughter, 13 months old, is on the spectrum. We are in a parent-led intervention program and will be enrolling in CARD at the end of the year. My question is in regard to regression. New data exists that suggests regression is more common than previously thought. That said, how common is regression observed in children who are in the middle of their treatment? Does therapy help offset whatever that means? She or he says regression. Also, is there an update on little Jack Riley? Thank you. You've been a huge source of hope for me and my family. And we won't say the name of the person who wrote the question because we like to preserve your anonymity. But I will be honest with you that I need to check back in with the family for Jack Riley. I have not heard from them since Christmas time, but he was doing great at Christmas time. But you know what? I will check back in, and I don't know if you have any update on Jack Riley and his family.
I don't believe I've talked to them recently, but I know that they had moved away.
Yes.
And at the last time I saw was probably the beginning of the year, and it sounded like things were going really well.
Absolutely.
So that's exciting.
But so for this family, first of all, can I talk about the fact that the family, 13-month-old child in the family is already on top of that, and how wonderful that is, and how if we could get every family to be that on top of it, I know that we would see better outcomes.
Definitely. I mean, congratulations to the family for being willing to acknowledge and to do something and to actually be active in terms of their intervention for their 13-month-old. Because 13-month-olds aren't doing a lot. They're still taking a lot of naps and they're still sleeping a lot. But the whole idea is that the whole time that they're awake, the important thing is that they're learning something.
Yes.
A typical child is learning every waking moment of the day. And, we do intensive intervention kind of to replicate that. If you look at the old Lovaas study, that's why they chose the 40 hours, was if a typical child is awake and learning constantly, we wanted the same for these kids too. Mm-hmm. So definitely in terms of the 13, in terms of regression, I don't know if there's a rate. I haven't checked into, if people think that, it's more active now and it happens earlier or ongoing. But for the most part, one of the things just in terms of intervention is that at first baseline assessment is really important. So if you're using skills, and we use skills here, is we go in and the families do this assessment on where their child is at. And as we go through and we start doing some treatment planning for the kids, when you have a supervisor who's looking at your program, we're monitoring every level of skill. And so most of the time, whatever area is a deficit, that's what we're trying to target. For a child that's 13 months, a lot of times one of the things that we're looking at is just stimulus orientation. So if the door slams, they should look at it. If there's a light, that flashes, they should be able to attend and use their eye contact to be able to see what's going on. Okay. And that's a lot of what a 13-month-old is doing. I've worked with really, really young kids, and usually they're siblings, and that's why we get them young. But a lot of the time, it's just getting them to orient to their environment, orient to people in their environment, being able to give that eye contact attention. So a lot of it is the initial attention so that they're able to look at what's there. And a lot of the kids on the spectrum later on, one of the issues that we have is that they're not attending to the right stimuli. They're not looking at the right things. And so we actually have to sit there and talk about like observation skills.
Yeah.
How do you look at your environment, and then how do you decide what's important?
I always talk about the Swiss cheese, that sometimes our older kids are Swiss cheese, that they have some skills, but then they have these holes and gaps that need to be filled in. And when I think about a 13-month-old, if we could fill in the gap before the rest of the cheese is formed, then that child doesn't have to catch up on that later on.
Yes.
And when I think about, like, I wouldn't normally think about stimulus orientation and the importance of a child, if the door slams, turning to look at it. But when I think about it now, about all the things you learn by noticing something and all the other things that you're picking up at the same time, like you're noticing whether somebody is afraid of the door slamming.
Yes.
And you're noticing, you know, that you're hearing the things and hearing the words and hearing the sounds, and your brain is different. So if you miss that point of orienting to something, you're missing a lot.
You're missing a lot of information.
Okay.
Okay, because a 13-month-old is gaining receptive language skills. There's a few words here and there expressively. You might have a few early, vocal kids. But for the most part, they're really looking at their environment. They're observing, and then, the beginning of a 13-month-old is learning to imitate. So really the basic skills of when they see somebody and they hear, can they orient to the voice and then see what that person's doing and saying. Yeah. And if they're not looking, then they're going to miss all the nonverbal cues.
Right.
They're going to miss all the ability to imitate, even if they know how to imitate.
Okay.
So a lot of times
that makes crazy sense to me.
Yeah.
About getting that skill in place.
Yeah. So a lot of times, like when we get them at this young of an age, that's what we're teaching all the parents how to do. Kind of like what this person was saying about a parent-led intervention.
Yes.
A lot of times we'll go in and actually go train the parents, or if they're our grandparents who are watching the child, or nannies or whatever, we're training all of them to every moment that child's awake, we want them looking and attending and seeing who's there and what's there and what, and getting them to just be able to notice all the things they're supposed to be noticing at that age.
I love it. Now, on the other part of this question, though, was about, does regression, if I'm reading it right, does regression happen in the middle of treatment? So if a child has regressed into autism, you start treatment, is it possible for there to be more regression once you've started treatment?
I think it's the way that you're monitoring it. There are definitely times during intervention where a child loses a skill, but whether the skill was intact there when you started or whether they only had a part of the skill and it wasn't a generalized skill, that's a big question, because one of the things when parents come in and they fill out this assessment about what their child can do. But even for the parents themselves, whoever's answering, their definition of what that skill is very different.
Yes.
And maybe, and especially at this age, things go quickly. So when you might learn part of it, and 6 months later, there's another part added to it. So it might look like they regressed, but they really didn't. They might have just stayed where they were at, and maybe they didn't build up on it. Yeah. But the thing is, if you have a good treatment program, and you have someone who's just looking at your child in all respects all the time, the minute you start to see a skill start to go away, you're not going to let it go away.
Yeah.
You reinforce it, you actually make them practice it more for fluency, and it's almost like you don't allow them to drop something.
Yeah.
Because you really, at this age, they're not doing a lot.
Yeah, right.
So the minute something starts to fade or could be fading, you don't allow it to fade.
Yeah.
You're, as a supervisor of the treatment planning team, you're really looking at this kid and saying, hey, we only have a really small amount of skills that we're focusing on because they're not awake that long.
Yeah.
And so you're really looking at everything, and hopefully what you're doing is you're building on everything that was already there. And let's say they start to lose something, you probably may not even notice it if they're already going so far ahead with other things that they're learning.
And I just want to say, I know that, as a parent of a child who regressed, we fear that forevermore. Mm-hmm. Even he is 13 now and doing so well, and And there were times when, like, we would have mastered something, but then we would see a little bit of slip and his team would be right back on it. And but my level of fear and anxiety would go through the roof. I have to say that probably more than half of the phone calls that Card received from me was about, is he regressing again? Because you worry, you lost something once, you worry about losing it again. And I know for people who now are catching it early, that they've heard stories from people like me and like Nancy talking about our kids regressing. And I think part of it is managing the fear as a parent and leaning into your team and, making sure that you talk about it when you see a skill at all fading or not being maintained, but to sort of dissect that from the emotion of it. Honestly, I get it. Like, I can go right back there to the fear of, oh no, what if we lose again? But I've seen so many families go through that and work through it, and I haven't seen a kid regress like they did in the beginning.
No, they're not allowed to.
And I like that.
They are not allowed to. I mean, we're so on top of them. That they may be building all these skills and maybe they lose one thing, but maybe that one thing is something that they rarely use. That's usually what it's related to. And a typical child is that way too.
Yes.
They learn skills and then the summer happens and then there's a whole group of kids that don't remember whatever
the slide.
It was. Yeah,
the slide. The summer slide. That's the name for it. Yeah.
It happens to some kids and it doesn't happen to others. And so it's important that, as the parent being involved, that you know what your child is learning. And that's the caregiver aspect, that parenting. And, okay, you learned this, now it's my turn to put it into place in real life. And a child at this age, even, below 5, you pretty much know everything that they know. And you'll be putting everything into place because you're gonna make them use it. And that's the aspect of like ABA that people forget about sometimes, is they learn about it in the room and they generalize it, but they forget about the fluency aspect. You have to use it. If you don't lose it, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Exactly.
And that's across the board, typical, not atypical, whatever, So it's important that you go in and you know what's going on and that you're making sure that child's being exposed to all these different situations and that they're able to use it. And it's tiring, but I think a young child, it's actually not that tiring because the more that they do, the more excited the parents are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, last thing, because I know we all know it so well, but just in case there's somebody new, I want to make sure that they remember that key to everything is making sure that when the child is learning constantly, that it's fun.
No, exactly.
It's got to be reinforcing.
It's got to be reinforcing and it's got to be relevant.
Yes.
The things that the kids find relevant and fun, they won't forget it.
Yeah. And I didn't want to leave it unsaid, even though it almost goes without saying, but in case somebody's new, let's remember that that's the base of everything. That whatever you're doing, when you're doing the stimulus orientation, whatever it is, there's got to be an element of it that's fun for the child. It's got to be reinforcing for them. It has to be meaningful reinforcement for attending to those things. Otherwise, you're going to have an unhappy child.
Yeah, but it's also like people will, like a lot of parents at this age, especially the younger ages, they're like, we just want our child to play. Play is actually one of the hardest things to teach our kids because there's no purpose except for social. And if you have a social deficit, there's really this unknown quality to why you're having to do something. So then that's where if you have a good reinforcer assessment, you're giving them other reasons to want to do this activity. And it might not be that activity that is so fun, that might be typically fun for another child, but it's okay. You're giving them a different reason, an additional reason to say, hey, if I never see M&Ms or I never see this other toy except when I'm doing this activity that I don't really know what it means, but I'm doing it, it's okay.
It is okay.
Because at the beginning, you're trying to teach them how to do the skill. And once they know how to do the skill and they practice it, they will find some fun in it.
They will. Absolutely. All right. I told you she was good. We're going to continue on with more questions, but first we're going to take a short break. Stick with us.
I'm very excited to be here at Denim and Diamonds. This is a fantastic night, supported by so many incredible people, and to see the kind of change and the kind of help that's being given.
It's kind of like going to the Oscars, and it's just been growing ever since, and we're overwhelmed at the support from the community.
I first want to thank everybody for coming out and really helping this Denims and Diamonds fundraiser, because autism has affected so many people, and the work that they've been doing is just off the charts and just wonderful.
As a mom, I'm grateful that I was managed to get the intervention for my daughter when she was young. So it's important to see that all kids can get the same type of intervention.
You with the side eyes, don't be discouraged, oh I realize it's hard to take courage in
We're just thrilled to be able to raise funds for things that are so vital, you know, like safety equipment, helmets, or fences so the kids don't run away, or iPads so they can learn to communicate.
There's still so much more to do, and we're here to lend our little hand and make this thing a global thing.
If you're just tuning in with us, this is the time that we normally do Ask Dr. Doreen. We're continuing on with Ask Dr. Doreen. We just don't have Dr. Doreen with us. But in her place, you know, she handpicked who we could have in her place, somebody that she trusts implicitly. We're talking about the clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, Evelyn Kung, and thank you so much for being with us today and answering our viewers' questions. If you want to, you can be writing in your questions on the live feature, but we're continuing on with questions that have come in the last 48 hours. Somebody wants to know about appropriate programming for autistic adults, particularly those labeled lower functioning. I'm putting the quotation marks because they did. It's practically non-existent. And then somebody wrote in, as they wrote in, they said they wanted us to check out a unique program, Operation Meaningful Life, on Facebook. And there's an article about this amazing program in this month's Autism Parenting magazine. This program has all heads turning towards it. But I wanted to stop and talk just for a couple of seconds about the fact that while in the world at large, maybe it's practically non-existent, it isn't at CARD.
Oh, definitely not.
And so I'd like for you to talk for a couple of minutes about what there is at CARD for adults and the wide range of it. I would love, because specifically they wanted to know about lower functioning, but we have for everybody.
Yes.
All right.
So, I mean, part of this is because we've been around for over 20 years now. And I think my oldest child since I've been working here is probably 26, around there. And, you know, I've had the whole spectrum that I've worked with. I have the kids who, you know, recovered, went on, and know nothing about their diagnosis. And many of those kids are actually in graduate school, getting paid to go to school, and are amazing, brilliant people. And then there's the other end where I have a child who probably would fit, you know, this term lower functioning, but in reality, that child is probably who I'm most proud of, because he's in his 20s now, and people would say he's challenged because he's able to ask for what he wants. And there's a few comments, but we have him using his iPad, using a couple of different apps to get everything, his needs met. And he is the happiest kid ever. Yeah. And I think for the parents, that's the thing that they've always wanted for him, is to be happy. And let me tell you, he is happier than any of my other kids out there. Because the ones that recover, they have to deal with life.
Yes.
And life is hard.
Life
and
is
they
hard.
they have to deal with all the problems that you and I deal
Yes.
with. And, you know, they have all the challenges of a teen to a 20-something-year-old and figuring out their life. And, you know, they're great individuals, but, you know, they have the ups and downs of life.
Sure.
But my kid, who's 23, 24 right now, is like, he is the happiest kid ever.
Yeah.
He has all his needs met. He can get anything he wants. You know, if he's not feeling well, we taught him to point to whatever part of his body, and he just says "ow."
Okay.
So like if he has a sore throat, he'll just point to his throat and say "ow." You know, if he stubs his toe, he points, but we know then we can help him.
Yeah.
And you know, we have the parents are incredible, and they, you know, very supported community. And you know, we have a little micro enterprise business that we've built for him, and really getting out there now, especially in the last year or two that he's been out of the school system. I mean, since he was 14, we've been talking about, you know, what he should be doing in his life, and really starting at the point at 14 saying, where is he happiest?
Yes.
You know, what environment, you know, what components. And we always knew that he likes to be outdoors. He likes the beach because he lives in California.
Right.
You know, doesn't like cold water, so the beach is not a good place in December.
Okay.
But like and he likes being, doing different things now. And this is a kid that actually we had to teach to like,
Okay.
and when he was younger, the minute if people came into the house, he'd always go to the other room.
Oh.
And he was the child that, like, in classrooms, there was a certain point where we would just throw a blanket over him. Instead of taking him out of the room, we would just throw a blanket over him because he just needed to calm down.
Right.
But now he likes being with people. So when people come into the house, he actually looks out the door, and he'll come and he'll sit himself right in the middle of everybody and look around like, what's going on, guys?
Yes.
But he is very, you know, in his life, he's happy. He has things. He's productive.
Right.
Every day he has his routine of what he's going to do, and it changes every day. Because for him, we've really focused a lot on putting routines, but making them flexible.
The thing that I always notice about when we start to talk about teens and adults is always in ABA we're talking about the individual, and it's programming for the individual. But I think it just becomes so much more individual the older they get, because there are certain programs that if you have a 3-year-old who's on the spectrum, there are certain programs that are sort of run-of-the-mill that almost every single kid is going to need at some point. Whereas when you get to a 14-year-old, not everybody needs the same thing at all.
Yeah. And so actually that's one thing that's a perfect thing that's coming. Probably at the beginning of next year, we're doing skills for adults right now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
We're writing, the curriculum's been written. It still needs to be filled in. So basically we wanted to get something out there because we've had so many requests for adults.
Yeah.
So skills for adults is coming out. And what I'm doing right now with the adult team who's working on developing skills is we're actually doing the assessment questions. And the assessment questions there are actually harder to write now because we want to put in the ones to try to figure out what level you're at.
Yeah.
So that if you have a child who's nonverbal, you're not having to answer about are they driving a car, are they having appropriate conversations in the community, and the ones that are driving cars and graduating from high school and trying to maintain staying in college, they shouldn't be asked all the questions about is there a way to communicate.
Yes.
So we're trying to actually right now write the questions that will divide the person going in to the right way so that they're able to just answer the questions that are most probably relevant to where they're at right now.
And that still exists in skills, doesn't it? I haven't taken the assessment in a while, but when you first start skills, there's a set of questions that you ask that help to figure out what questions are going to be
and so
appropriate for you.
there's the first 10 questions to try to figure out where you're at so you don't have to. But this is even more complex now because of the range of skills.
Yeah.
You know, last week, actually today, I think we're starting a 40-something-year-old college professor, I think.
Wow.
And just wanting some, kind of not relationship advice, but trying to how to maintain boundaries.
Yes.
Recognize some of the emotional things that happen.
Gosh, I need that. Can I sign up for that too? Because I need that. Well, you know what? I always take a step back, and one of the things that I learned because I got to read through skills. When I was training to come and hold this seat, there was more that I needed to know than the average parent, right? To be able to sit here. And so I got to read through skills, and I was always struck by like as I read the progression of things and read the lessons, I was like, oh man, we could all benefit from this.
No, it's true.
Especially the executive functions curriculum, man. We all need.
Yeah, all of us need it.
And the social language curriculum. I got to be honest, there were things that I was like, oh, I've always wondered why that didn't work for me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, there's many times, even just here, you know, we have a big business now, and I'll be writing something for someone, and then some just random person from here will look at it and said, they'll point and they'll be like, we didn't know that. Is that how you're supposed to do that?
Right. Right. No, it makes great sense. So,
but no, so that is coming. It's a part of CARD already. We already have quite a few adults, you know, over time. We take them all the time. We haven't formally had an adults program because it's just been integrated as our kids have grown. A lot of times they've just grown into the adult phase of life, and they do have different needs and different types of, you know, not just needs, but, you know, what should their life be like? And then also in the context of their families.
Yeah.
And every family is different, and we try to respect where the family is at and what values they have, and trying to, you know, figure out, like, you know, what are the goals for the family for this child, but also what are the goals for that child directly in that family.
Yes.
Because they're different.
Yes. And that's true of all families that you deal with in CARD. I know that even if it's a child that's 2.5, you take those things into consideration. I do think it gets so much more complicated the older that they are. But even for the 2-year-old, you take those things into consideration.
No, we definitely do. You have to, because it's their life. And even, let's say you're at CARD and you're not anymore, you stay in your family.
Yes, absolutely.
So you have to fit into your family.
But having said that, sometimes we have parents who will write in and say, you know, I have a 2.5-year-old or I have a 3-year-old, and they're wanting to work on things that I don't want them to work on. I want them to work on conversation skills and job skills, and they want to work on joint attention. And I don't know if you want to take just a second to talk about the fact that when people are making recommendations with the really small kids, how important it is for parents that, having not been through this before, that we need to listen to our professionals.
No, definitely. I mean, we always say that if you don't know what to teach your child, you go look at other kids who are their age. Whatever age you're at, go look and see at those individuals at the same age. And there's going to be a range of skills of what's required. But for the most part, wherever community you're at, go and look at what those kids are. Because what are those kids doing? And that helps the parents give a measure, or, a way to measure what they're teaching. 20 years ago, I used to travel everywhere, all across the country. And I mean, I've been in little towns of 85 people, and I'll walk in and the 2-year-old is naming off, what a trapezoid is.
Right.
And I think, okay, a trapezoid, it's a shape in one of those shape books, so that's why they were taught that.
Right.
But they really, in real life,
it's not useful information.
They will never need it, and a lot of adults don't know what a trapezoid
Right.
So it's just always trying to listen to whoever your supervisor, who is that professional, because they should have a scope of what development is.
Yeah.
And if they don't have a scope, because sometimes ABA providers don't have a developmental background, they should know to look.
Absolutely.
They should know to see, like, developmentally, what is appropriate for this age and where are we at. And you're planning for now. You're not planning for the future. As you get into, let's say, the teenagers that I work with, where we're starting to figure out schooling, we do have to make larger plans, but even then, they're very generalized plans to figure out, like, how do we get specific later on with transition.
Yeah. And, last week when we did the show with Dr. Graham-Pichet, we got so many questions about skills. So many people wrote in and asked about skills. And I mentioned to them then that you recently did a training for us, especially for parents who are CARD parents, because each client, it isn't just children, each client that comes into CARD gets their own skills account that comes with being a CARD family. It isn't just CARD families that can have a skills account, but you get one if you are a CARD client. And for the parents of those kids, you did a training for them to know how they could utilize the information in skills. So that was, if you haven't seen that training, it is Evelyn who does that training for us, which was great. And it lives on our YouTube page, and you guys can go and find it there, and anyone can watch it. You don't have to have a code. If if you're not a card parent and you want to go watch it, watch it. But some of it won't apply to you if you're not a card parent. Because you'll have differences if you're not a card parent. In any case, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back with more questions during Ask Dr. Doreen, this special day with Evelyn Kung. Stick with us.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. For this month, I figured we're going to do a super special portrait that is in the theme of October, which means spooky eyes that follow you as you walk around. In this activity, you and your child are going to work on emotions and socio-dramatic play. So let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are a camera, a ping pong ball, X-Acto blade, tape, and a marker. And if your kids are up to it, props and costumes. Now let's take some photos. It's a great time to work on emotions and socio-dramatic play. Let's get our props.
See all the colors in the sky tonight. It's time to let the sunshine hide.
Once you finish your photo shoot with your child, select one of the photos and print it out on a large piece of paper. Now that you've selected your photo, you're going to take an X-Acto blade and just cut out the eyes from it. This part of the activity is definitely only for the adults. Now that you've finished cutting out the eyes, what we're going to do next is take a ping pong ball and cut it in half. You'll see why in just a moment. So with the ping pong balls, we're going to create the illusion of the following eyes. So what you're going to do is take a marker and you're going to make a dot in the very, very center. You're going to want to make it like the same size of what the iris was in the photo. Now that the ping pong balls are done, I'm just going to tape them to the back of the photograph. So does it look like she's following you? Well, I hope you enjoyed this activity for Smarty. Until next time, craft on, guys.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We have with us today not Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet because she was called away, but in her place we have Evelyn Kung. She's the clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. So if there was anybody who could fill Dr. Doreen's tiny little shoes, it would be Evelyn Kung. Thrilled to have her here, and she's answering your questions. So our next question, Dear Shannon, watched How to Dance in Ohio. There was a big screening at UCLA the other day for How to Dance in Ohio. I have it on my DVR, and I've watched part of it, but I haven't seen the whole thing because it played on PBS in April. But they go on to say, in a parent voiced a concern when there is a change or change in expectation, the child gets stuck and doesn't actively seek help or figure out that there is another solution. This was an amazing teen who goes to college and last minute change in classroom, and she stood in the front of the room for the whole period. My teen does this too in various situations. Is this skill taught in skills? What is the skill called? And thank you. P.S. I listen to the show when I can, and Dr. Doreen is pure genius. So nothing to live up to there, right? Thank you so much for all your sharing and wisdom. So, what is there a name for that skill?
Well, it's multiple skills.
Okay. See, that's where it gets complicated.
Yeah, that's where
All
it's
right.
complicated. This is very common. I've had kids in New York City on a snowstorm where PE got changed.
Yes.
And because it started snowing unexpectedly, he stood outside for the whole PE period where it snowed on him.
Breaks your heart.
And it's just very, very, it's upsetting to the child, and it's just it's sad from our end.
Yes.
You know, because you just want to do something. And it's upsetting because the school actually got mad at him for not going somewhere else. So that situation, I just always remember it because it was trying to manage all the pieces.
Well, and when you think about it, I mean, what it brings up for me is that we just commemorated the first anniversary of Paul Lee's death. And in all reality, it was a lot of the same issues that Paul rode the bus every morning, and the bus driver would say, okay, Paul, it's time to get off the bus. And because he had a substitute bus driver and that was not said, Paul didn't get off the bus. And the new bus driver didn't do what he was legally responsible for doing, it, which is walking the bus to see if everyone is off the bus. He parked the bus in the hot sun and left, and Paul sat on the bus and died.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, when you think about it, it's so frightening. And of course, a lot of people were like, well, why didn't he just get off the bus? Well, you know, that's a complete lack of understanding. And the school being mad that this young man didn't just go inside, it's a complete lack of understanding of what's happening. So help us, educate us.
I mean, this is where, I mean, we can't plan for every opportunity.
Right.
But this is the important thing of where whenever we're teaching these kids, I said, yeah, you're going to teach them a rule, but you have to teach them the exceptions to rules along the way. Okay. So you have to be able to say, okay, this is a rule, but then try to think of other situations that would happen to show them, you know, this is a rule, but when this happens, then there's an alternative. Okay. But this child that they're talking about, this teen who is, you know, in college and is getting stuck, it becomes a problem solving.
Okay.
That's really what it is. It's executive function, all of it. All the parts of it is executive function. So one of the things is there's just a simple lesson called disengagement.
Okay.
It's like you're doing something and you have to be able to move your attention to something else. You have to be able to shift your attention.
Okay.
And so in skills, it's very simple because it's basically the beginning parts of I'm playing with Legos and mom wants me to go eat, so I have to like stop myself and disengage from the Legos so that I can go do something else. So that is a very minor component, but there is a sense of disengagement that the child has to recognize that they have to move their attention to.
Okay.
And then for the majority of the teens that I worked with that do get this stuck, they're like, well, we're here, but nobody told us what to do. And there's that asking for help. Recognizing that there's a problem.
Right.
Okay, so asking what's different about this environment than normally happens.
Right.
And if there's nobody in the classroom, that means it's not a normal day.
Right.
And that means I need to go do something.
Okay.
And that something usually is to go ask for help. To go ask those good questions.
Yes.
And so that actually, the questions part is something that I think that we don't do enough for so many of our kids in ABA programs. They learn to ask simple questions like what, who, where for their daily life, but they don't know how to ask good questions a lot of times. So, you know, there are, you know, definitely there's a whole group that get, you know, all the training for that. But it's when something goes wrong, learning to just give all the information that's needed. So being able to recognize, okay, this isn't the same as what normally happens. There's nobody here. So that means something else is happening. So I need to go find someone to ask. Who would that good person be? And so they would need to know their environment to who they would ask. Who's the important people to ask? Like somebody in their class if they see somebody, or maybe, you know, somebody else that's in there's usually a sign somewhere. Just knowing that there, you know, there's information to look around and do that observation skill we talked about.
Yes.
To like look on the board or look on, you know, did they go to another room? And that's usually what happens in colleges is they'll write another room or they'll put signs everywhere saying if you're in this class, you need to go to this place. And being able to look around and being able to make those judgments. Okay, people aren't here like we normally are. That means they're somewhere else. How would they know? I need to ask somebody if I see somebody. But if I don't see anybody, I need to look around and see if there's any information for me.
Yes.
And then being able to see and follow. So it's a problem solving overall. And it's a social problem solving.
Okay.
Okay.
Because there's two different types of problem solving in skills. So it's the social problem solving.
It's the social problem solving because you're in a place that has to deal with people.
Okay.
And you're trying to get someplace, there's information somewhere that you're not receiving.
Okay.
And so if it's really sitting there and teaching the child to recognize where am I, what's going on, what's different.
Yes.
What's important. So that's the saliency aspect of it.
Okay.
So there's a lesson called determining saliency.
Yes.
Like what is actually important here.
Yeah.
The important thing is I get to class.
Yeah.
And I need to be wherever my teacher is.
Right.
So being in class is not being in a classroom. It's being wherever your teacher and your class students are.
Okay.
It's that
So
flexibility.
Yes.
So then that's another part of EF is the flexibility of, you know, what's the important part of what I'm doing and then what components make up those important parts.
And so maybe, because I think this is a parent who's asking specifically about which lesson is in skills, because I think they have skills. So maybe starting with taking the assessment for the EF section and then going through and not looking at this as just a spot check of teaching one lesson, but going through the EF curriculum and working through it step by step, because EF kind of builds on all those different things, and you don't want to have part of it missing.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about EF is it does build step by step, but there are some things where you just learn it isolated and it's okay.
Okay.
But whenever it comes to social, When it has to deal with somebody else, it's usually there's a foundation that
Okay.
of skills that you have to build on.
Okay.
And whenever you become social, there's more than one skill involved.
Okay.
Almost always.
Okay.
Because not everybody's the same.
And I got to refer to, because we've brought up skills so many times, and the skills people gave me my little cheat sheet here so that I would never forget to mention. So if you have questions about skills and you want to look at it, www.skillsforautism.com, but there's a phone number, 877-975-4559, and you can call them and talk more about skills. We talked a lot about it last week, so I'm not going to belabor too much for that. I think we should take a short break. I want to mention before we go to break that somebody wrote in with an IEP question from an LAUSD school that you want to know if something was missing from the document which was agreed upon in the IEP meeting. Does another IEP meeting need to be called on to put in the missing piece? Do we sign first and disagree, or what do we do? I'm gonna let Bonnie deal with that, but I will tell you, if you haven't yet signed it, don't yet. Wait until we talk with Bonnie about it, but don't sign it if it's got something missing on it, even if you agreed to what was on the document in the IEP. Don't sign yet, okay? And then we're going to continue on, but we'll talk with Bonnie Yates about that tomorrow. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, we now have a new segment on Thursdays where special education attorney Bonnie Yates joins us, and you can write in your legal questions. And it's been an amazing new addition here at Autism Live, and that'll be tomorrow. It's in the first hour at the 45-minute marker. So we're going to take a short break, and we're going to be back with more questions with Evelyn Kung. Stick with us.
This is Logan Shepherd. At first glance, he looks like a typical American teenager. He plays in a band, loves hanging out with his friends, he doesn't like doing homework, and he's not really fond of broccoli. But Logan Shepherd is not your typical 14-year-old. Logan was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. He was nonverbal, made no eye contact, and his parents were told to abandon all hope. Instead, his parents began an intensive intervention treatment. At its center was a quality ABA program known as the CARD method. This is Logan Shepherd now.
All I really want to say is, I'm kind of copying Martin Luther King. I kind of have a dream, that one day, I can just, inspire people and never give up. Because, that's what I want to do in life. Because if I can succeed, they can succeed. And I will succeed.
To follow Logan's musical journey, visit www.facebook.com/officialdrummerrock or @drummerrock on Instagram. For more information on the CARD method, visit www.centerforautism.com or call 800-345-CARD. Rock on, Logan.
Welcome back. We are here during a segment that we call Ask Dr. Doreen. Unfortunately, we don't have Dr. Doreen here with us today, but in her place, we have the fabulous Evelyn Kung, and she is the clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and we're thrilled and fortunate that we have her here with us answering your questions. So I want to move on to the next question. Hi, Shannon, having a moment here, and I'm sending you a hug, you know. Teen tends to assume. We had a volunteer meeting today. This is despite me asking a few times of the location and time and to ask him to confirm. He has mistaken times, locations, etc. before. He is resistant to my help. Just found out from him that this meeting was rescheduled. He wants to be independent and as do we, but that is not working. He has to deal with the consequences many times, having to wait for a long time for me to pick him up because I scheduled something else. What is the deficit? Executive planning? Short of me calling the organizer, how can we train him? Another example is an event which was a long morning drive. Asked him what he needed to bring, at least 3 different days. He said the message only said the time and map. We were not prepared at all. I read the message myself and it had all of the info. Reading problem? Sorry, I need to stop whining and get on with skills. Will it help me with these issues? And thank you so much for listening. You know I'm sending you hugs because I live a lot in this land. Right now we have these teenagers and they are like, I always tell the story about last year when Jen was in junior high and it was the end of the first semester and they had to pick up their new schedule and it was the first day. And so I go off to school to pick up the new schedule and go through it with him. And we get out into the quad and he looks at me and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm getting in line to pick up your schedule." And he said to me, "Look around. Do you see any other parents here? What are you doing? Why are you here? Why aren't you letting me do this?" And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. And I immediately like stepped behind a pillar in shame as a parent for how could I have done this to him and how great is it that he noticed. And he comes running over in my face and he goes, "What am I supposed to do?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, what am I doing? Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? And I said, "Oh, okay, you're supposed to stand in the line that find your name and stand in the line." "What name?" I said, "What do you mean, what name? My first name or my last name?" And I said, "Oh, your last name. Go stand in the line that has the same letters as your last name. And do what when I get to the front of the line? Pick up your schedule. And then what am I supposed to do?" As he's yelling at me in this quad behind a pillar. And I'm trying not to laugh now because the whole thing is so off the wheels hilarious that he so desperately wants to be a teen. I so desperately want to drive the bus. And in between it all, it's a cluster, you know what. So I feel you. And so what do we call this, Evelyn?
Okay, so this is all
mom
executive
insanity?
function. No, the whole thing is, no, regardless of the diagnosis or not, they're still teenagers.
Oh, can I say too that while I stood there behind the pillar and my son is in gen ed and like 30 other students came up and they were like, "What are we doing? What line am I?"
Exactly.
And they were all, typical 12 and 13-year-olds. And then I felt a little bit better. But
No. So despite any diagnosis, they're still teenagers.
Yeah.
They still go through all the phases of adolescence that, a typical teenager would. It just gets a little bit more crazy because it's the deficits that start hitting and they don't know how to get the information.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you weren't there, those teenagers that didn't know where to go would just be asking their friends.
Yes.
Like,
or
what are we
another
doing
teacher.
Here? Or a teacher, but they would just be like, "What are we doing? Where are we?" I've stood in so many lines with my teenagers where they're all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Where they're just looking at each other. Does anyone know why we're here? Does
Right.
anyone know?
Right. I had to do that in line recently and say, "What is this line for? Why
Yes.
are we here?
Yes.
Does anybody know why the line isn't moving?"
Yeah. So on that end, there's just a basic teen element. Okay. But the rest of it is going to be executive functioning, and it's going to be specifically planning and organizing.
Okay.
Okay. Really, those are the specifics that you're looking for. And a part of this executive function curriculum that isn't in planning and organizing is what I was talking about earlier, the determining saliency lesson in skills.
Yes.
Because that's just figuring out what's important. No matter if you're looking at it, if you're getting information because you're just looking at a scene, whether it's in a picture or just what's in front of you in your environment, or if you're reading texts, or if you hear information, your teen has to figure out, what do I actually have to attend to in all this information? And that saliency piece comes with a lot of times rules. Like, there's some simple rules that we have the kids discover. If you do that lesson, it teaches them how to figure out some of the rules. So it's like, and then there's simple rules where people are always more important than objects. So, if there's all these things happening with people and there's all these things, going on, there's certain emotions or relationships that you have that are more valuable than any of those broken toys or things that you're not getting to. If anybody's crying or sad, you always attend to those people first. So there's some rules that your kids have to learn about just daily life that are very general. Yeah. Then after that, you have to end up on the more specific end of the situation.
But it's hard figuring out how to approach some of this with our kids. If I sit and try to talk to Jem about this stuff, boy, he is
No.
so uninterested. But we discovered last year that there are riddles online that sometimes deal with this kind of stuff. There, especially, it was like right around Halloween last year where there was the riddle online that was a meme that everybody was doing, and you were supposed to ask all of your friends. So, you know, there's a railroad, and there are 3 guys that are working on a bridge in the railroad, and the train was supposed to be moved to another area of track, but it wasn't. You only have time to do one thing. Do you warn the 3 guys so that they live? It was this whole thing about, or do you let them go through, let the train go through, kill the 3 guys, but it saves 1,000 people on the other end. And they were telling me this quiz, and I was getting anxious thinking about it. But the truth of it was that it led to a conversation with my son that got to all of this stuff about, it was going to hit a building at some point, and we discussed the fact that people are more important than the building, that you would save the lives, not the building, and I learned through that because I couldn't get him to just talk about it. But if you did a riddle, for him, he wanted to do that. For other kids, you got to find another way.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they're teens,
Yeah.
and teens don't want to listen to their parents.
Yeah.
So my best thing is to get someone else to do it, even for
Okay.
my own kids. Like
Okay.
I have one child that's she's typical but extremely challenged on the executive function end, and talk about the eye rolling and all that stuff that teenagers do. But the thing is, it's better for me, and I just ask her, do you want me to do this now? Do you want your dad, or do you want me to go tell a teacher at school?
Okay.
Or a counselor or somebody else.
Right.
And she chooses. She's just, she makes the decisions because I said, somehow you're going to have to get this information. And so I actually, even with the kids that we work with here, I say, okay, I'm here. I bug you all the time. Like, I love the kids that are like at this end, and they're like, oh, mom's bugging me. I'm like, okay, obviously to preserve the parent relationship, it's better to have somebody else to do it.
Okay.
Because then you're not doing the teacher mother, like the dual role.
Yes.
And that really upsetting to a lot of the kids.
Yes.
And so we'll just tell the kid, who do you want to actually learn this stuff
I
from?
love that. I need to write that on a Post-it and crochet it on a pillow.
No, but I'll go to a counselor at school or a resource teacher, and I'll say, like, here, this is upcoming activity at school.
Right.
We need to figure this out. I'll even, if you have a treatment planner for ABA, I actually write out what they need to know.
Okay.
Like on the saliency end, try to figure out what the important things are. And with planning and organizing, especially events, it's very spot on.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Who's there? Is there warning date? Do you have to reserve any RSVP?
Right.
Like how long will it take you to get there? You teach them how to use their maps, GPS. How
Yes.
long. Make sure somebody can take you if you can't get there on your own. Like there's really specific in the planning exercises about like what information you need, and the kids actually learn it really quickly. A lot of times I'll actually have like the worksheet and I'll give it to the teacher and I'll say, can you go over this? And basically this kid needs to do it for everything that happens at school.
And unfortunately, we're like so out of time. I lost all track of time because I was having so much fun. But then it also, we have to give them some sort of a reinforcer, because to them being prepared is not the reinforcer.
Okay. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't. If they really like the peers and want to go,
then it might be.
It might be. But the other thing I forgot that's really important in this is so many of my kids prefer to do this on their phones now because they like the tech aspect of it.
Yeah.
So if I tell them you can put all this information into their calendar and it gives them a reason, and I have a lot of them text themselves because they like texts.
Yes.
And they might not look at the calendar. They text all the information because it gives them an opportunity to text at school, which maybe their peers don't have the opportunity.
Right.
So they know I have to be at so-and-so by this time. It takes this long to get there. I need this. There's a permission slip. And they text it actually to their parents. And then it creates the parent not having to nag and ask.
Love it.
So the kid actually has a copy themselves and the parent has a copy, so the parent doesn't have to ask.
Fantastic.
And the kids love that.
Brilliant.
So if you have a kid who's into technology, that's the way to do it.
Okay. Thank you so much. We didn't get to all of our questions, and I apologize to everybody, but this was so great. And we'll be asking you to come back in the future when Dr. Grandpichet is busy or someplace where she can't get with us. But thank you so much for being here with us. We're going to take a break and go to the A word. When we come back, it's time for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We've got amazing guests, and we're going to be starting out with the director of Off the Rails. Adam Irving is going to be joining us. This was an amazing it is an amazing documentary. I got to watch it last night. Amazing story. So stick with us. First, here is the A word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack.
Jack Riley.
He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
Exciting.
I say Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Everybody around is so down with Jack.
It'll be my birthday today.
Yeah, can we celebrate our birthdays together? We're birthday buddies? Okay. Wear hats. Should everyone wear hats?
We need some more friends for the house.
Here, you want to give hats to everybody? 1, 2, hey. Yay! One's for Christmas and one's for your birthday, okay? So go ahead, rip it up. Yeah. You know who it is?
Raspberries.
What do you say to Miss Jessica?
You have to look at her eyes too.
Happy birthday, Jessica.
What do you?
But what else do you say? Do you like your gift?
Yeah.
I'm over here. Do you like your gift?
Yeah.
Then
So
what do you?
look at
What do you say?
So what do you say when you like something that somebody gave you? Hey, I'm over here. Do you say you're welcome or do you say please?
Please.
What else do you say?
Can I have cake, please?
Say thank you. Say thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to take off my hat, so it's not my birthday yet.
Your birthday is tomorrow. You are right. It is not your birthday yet.
Let's make making
Check out
raspberries.
yours. He's like, it's not my birthday.
They are making
Right.
raspberries.
I'm so smart. I'm smart.
They're making raspberries.
This isn't the first time Jack Riley's mentioned making raspberries to himself today. He scripted this phrase while he was opening his presents just a few moments ago. Let's watch that again.
Raspberries. Making raspberries. Raspberries. Like making raspberries. They are making raspberries. Like making raspberries.
What are you talking about?
Raspberries.
I don't see any raspberries. I see cars. I see a car. I see a truck.
Jessica redirects Jack Riley to talk about what's present instead of non-functional language. This stereotypical behavior is a common one for kids on the spectrum. Not all kids, though, do it for the same reason. But typically, echolalia is intrinsically reinforcing. It comforts and helps regulate the self because it's a form of self-stimulatory behavior, like hand flapping or body rocking.
Hey, no, Jack Riley. Hey. Stop. What's wrong? Do you need pillow squishes?
Yeah.
Is that what you need? Okay, come on. Let's go do pillow squishes. You just needed some tickles.
Jack Riley has been doing quite a bit of self-stimulatory behavior. He needs some sensory input, so Jessica gives him some tickles and pillow squishes, so he has some socially appropriate alternatives from getting the sensory input that he needs. What Jessica and his therapist need to do is anticipate when he's going to do this and try to redirect it before it even happens.
You was silly.
Let's do this again.
Okay, good talking. Okay.
Parent to parent, sometimes our kids will engage in certain behaviors that really seem random to us. We have no idea why they're doing it. It's really important to remember that all behaviors happen for a reason. And in fact, challenging behaviors happen for 4 reasons more often than any other reasons. The 4 reasons are attention. A lot of times our kids do things to get attention, and remember, negative attention counts. Another reason why our kids do things is to escape someone or something. A third thing is to gain access to someone or something. And the 4th reason is because it just feels good. So the next time your child is engaging in a behavior that seems random or strange or totally from outer space, stop and ask yourself which one of these 4 things might be causing it. Is it attention, Might it be to escape something? Is it to gain access to someone or something? Or is it that it just feels good? Knowing why the behavior happens helps us to deal with it. What is this ABA treatment I keep hearing everyone talk about?
Well,
Welcome.
hello.
Well, hello. It's all about me.
Right.
It's not about you. It's all about me. Welcome to Let's Talk
Welcome.
Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I have with me the fabulous
Nancy Alspaugh Jackson.
and I'm Shannon. So that's why we're Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Can we just say that you better tune in next week because next week is the Halloween show.
Yes, and we're getting our costumes together.
And you know that Nancy brings it. I
don't
have
know
to
about
work
this year. I don't know
hard.
about this year. Bringing it this year might not be the year. I'm a little
Well,
fragile.
I will say this, that we had many people write in with suggestions after we changed what we were going to be.
Right.
And we took part of somebody's suggestion that they wrote in. So
Yes,
we tweaked it slightly, but for one of us. But so you'll have to tune
Yeah.
in to see. It's a secret. We could tell you, but then we'd have to kill you.
We were going to be Donald and Hillary, but we just decided overdone,
Couldn't do it.
overkill, and we
Couldn't do
just
it. Who
can't
needs
do
it?
it.
Who needs it?
We can't go there.
So, but
It's
make
enough
sure you watch
already.
the debate today because and then it's the end of that. The debates are over after today.
Thank God. Do you know, I actually heard on the news that people are going in to see therapists and psychiatrists.
I believe it.
For election stress disorder. It's an
No,
actual syndrome, and I personally have been having nightmares about Donald Trump. So I just have to say it. I had a horrible nightmare the other night where he was lurking over me. And maybe because of what I've heard, on so many news stories, that it's just like in my head.
Well, I think, I didn't intend to go there, but for a lot of us, I identify myself as somebody who has been the victim of sexual assault.
As I have been.
Having all of this in the news all the time and having people online say things, and I don't care, because it's across so many things. It's really hurtful to people when people just automatically say, "Oh, well, if they didn't come forward
before,
then before."
Yeah.
If we could do a whole show on
We
that.
could do a whole show on this, and we are very opinionated on it, having
experienced
both experienced it,
and we are
myself
both,
with a powerful man who
we are both
was
strong women
Yes.
who speak out and are
Exactly.
opinionated. And
Exactly.
I can say for myself, when this happened to me, I did not come forward.
I was paralyzed when it happened to me because it was a powerful man that no one would have believed he did it. So,
And I
there
didn't
you
come
go.
forward because the person said that they were going to have me killed.
Oh, good.
So,
Okay. Well,
there
on
you
that
go.
note.
And it's funny how that can shut you right down.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Anyway, we were planning on going there,
no,
weren't we?
we weren't, but we did. Okay, so
big news this week.
Autism Speaks is changing its mission for the first time in over 10 years. Rather than focusing on a cure, quote, for autism, the nonprofit says it will now look towards advancing research into causes and better therapies for autism spectrum disorders, as well as promote acceptance, advocacy, and support for individuals and families. And they have a quote from Stephen Mark Shore, who is on the autism spectrum, correct?
And he's been on our show, and we adore him. Dr.
Yes.
Shore is amazing.
Dr. Shore.
And he's on the board now
Yes,
of Autism
he is.
Speaks.
And he said Autism Speaks was founded on the goal of curing autism. However, similar to many experiences of parents of children with autism, the organization grew to believe that autism is something to be worked with for promoting fulfilling and productive lives of people on the spectrum, rather than something that has to be done to.
And I just want to say that tomorrow on the show, we are having Alex Plank come on the show to talk about this because he's an adult who's on the spectrum, and we wanted to get his perspective on this and about what this means to him. I think it's a step in the right direction. I
As
think
do
it's a
I.
positive thing.
Very.
I will say that I had some grief about the fact that in doing this, we lost words like challenge and hardship and crisis that came out of the mission statement in conjunction with autism. I know that those are words that are really hurtful to our self-advocates who are adults who are on the spectrum. I think that doesn't negate that for those of us who have our children regress into autism, that it is a hardship, it is a crisis, and that it's a big challenge,
It is a challenge.
And so I had some grief about losing those words, that there isn't a way that we can compromise But it will continue to be a hardship for families. It will continue, I believe that it's a crisis when your child is diagnosed with autism, that is not the moment in which you go, woohoo! Later on, I think a lot of us come to a certain peace with it and learn to
acceptance.
celebrate the differences
Yes.
that are there. But that is not the story when your child is first being diagnosed.
No, and I just want to point out that we still live in a society, and our first guest is a filmmaker who's done a remarkable documentary on the challenges of living with ASD with one particular individual. And the movie is called Off the Rails. We're going to have the director here in a minute.
And it's not all about IQ.
No, no. And
the challenges
if
can
you
be there
wanna,
even
if
with
you
a high
want to
IQ.
see, we'll talk about this later, but
Yeah.
it's a perfect example of some of the challenges.
Yes.
And it is a world, unfortunately, it is a world that is geared to neurotypical individuals.
Yeah, they don't get
and
it.
when the pendulum swings to being geared to those on the spectrum, then it won't be the challenge it is. But until that point occurs, it is a challenge.
Yeah, I agree. In any case, so we're going to take a break, and when we come back, our first guest today, Adam Irving, the director of this amazing documentary, Off the Rails, and then a little bit later on in the show, we have Marguerite Ellisofan. I'm
No,
so
I
afraid
hope we'll
I'm
get it from
slaughtering
her.
her name. But she's the author of My Picture Perfect Family. But first up, Adam Irving, right after these messages. Stick with us.
We're very excited because we're in the Noah's Ark exhibit and we're here with Jason Porter. Thank you for taking us on this tour.
Oh, thanks for having us.
So you're going to show me around a little bit and show me some of the secrets of the Noah's Ark exhibit, right?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Cool, let's go. Yeah. So Jason, tell us, this is an amazing space. Why is it so incredible for children?
One of the values of the Skirball Cultural Center is taking care of the earth and one another, and so this idea of repurposing materials that would otherwise be tossed off was a big component to how we design the galleries. It's based on, certainly the story that everyone knows is the one from the Hebrew Bible, the story of Noah. But in our research, we looked at over 200 flood stories from around the world, and many different cultures have flood stories that have similarities, and the similarities that we identified were these 3 chapters: the storm, some crazy challenge that comes to your life; an ark, a kind of means of survival, a way for a community to come together to survive; and finally the rainbow, which is this kind of symbol of hope, the second chance to make the world anew.
Love it. All right, let's take a look through, and we're going to talk about some of the learning opportunities that are available here.
We really wanted people to kind of discover what they were supposed to do. For example, this elephant has a gong in the center, and there's a little wheel here that you can turn and see what happens. But there's also some hidden things, like there's a little peephole in this polar bear, so it's kind of a moment where you could talk with your kids about what does it mean that that polar bear in there only has a small piece of ice to live on it, and you could talk about kind of the environmental issues that might be associated with it.
All right, should we go downstairs?
Yeah, let's check out the storm.
So Jason, what do you call this room?
This is called the Storm Gallery. In one side of the gallery, we have a storm wall, which is all sorts of sounds and sight effects to make the storm come to life. We have this, what we call the load up. It's fairly intuitive. You put animals onto the conveyor belt and you turn the wheel and they get loaded up onto the ark. Except you can't do both at the same time by yourself. It's kind of layered in the doing, the learning that we're really interested in, which is about this notion of working together in order to accomplish something. So, when you first get on the ark, obviously you enter 2 by 2, as the story goes. And so the animals in this first section of the ark, they're not quite sure where they should be. They're a little bit nervous about who to hang out with. The gallery is really organized so that the animals are still in pairs. So we talk a lot about what are the elements of home that you need to survive. And it's really a nice kind of intro into the whole experience of being in a community, learning to be together with people who may or may not be the same as us. This gallery of Noah's Ark is unique, I think, in terms of the way that it was designed, that it offers a huge variety of experiences in a way that really accommodates people of all stripes and spots. So there are more quiet zones, like we just left in the move-in day, where you can come into this room where you have a lot of large motor things that are happening, including climbing, and we kind of have nicknamed this the arcade. It's kind of the chapter in the story where they're making new families and they're mixing with other animals that they've befriended. Oh, we have to talk about poop.
We can't do a show without talking about poop.
So, the other fact of life on an ark is that everybody poops. So the challenge is to, clean up.
Okay, so we're in the last room, very cool room. What do we call this room?
We call this the Rainbow Gallery. People really get that this is a place of hope. Sometimes there's an art-making project, that it ends in some sort of inspiration, that people feel like they're inspired to take action in the world and make it a better place.
Thank you so much for showing us everything and telling us about all the wonderful things at the Skirball Center.
Currently, in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism. My beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're gonna take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Granpichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable and recovery from autism is possible.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We are delighted to have our next guest in the studio, Adam Irving. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, Adam is the director, producer, and director of photographer for Off the Rails, which is a remarkable documentary that has received a lot of buzz and a lot of awards. Adam, welcome to the show. And I'm just going to ask you directly, tell us what this film is about.
It's about a man named Darius McCullum who is on the autism spectrum, and he has spent most of his life in maximum security prison for impersonating New York City transit workers and driving their vehicles as an imposter. And he's never hurt anyone, and he's never damaged any property, but this overwhelming love of transit that he has cost him his freedom. And the criminal justice system in New York has not found a way to channel his passions into anything legal, so they just warehouse him in a prison for a few years, let him out without rehabilitating him when he's on the inside. So when he gets out, he just does it again and again and again. 32 times he's been arrested for this.
Shocking.
Yeah.
But can we say though that the film is beautiful?
Thank you.
It's beautiful. I mean, it's shot beautifully, but it's beautiful in terms of, you know, it's kind of a love letter to Darius, and we get it all unfolds beautifully, and we get frustrated. I mean, I think anybody watching it, you get frustrated, and it's a little bit like a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
Where I found myself getting really hopeful that everything was going to be okay, and then it would take a sharp turn, and we go down another rabbit hole. And I don't want to give anything away, right? Because we want people to see the film.
Sure.
Where can they go to see the film? Let's start there.
They can see it in theaters in New York and Los Angeles.
Okay.
Here in LA, it'll be playing at Laemmle Music Hall November 4th to 10th, 5 times a day. And then in New York, later in November, from the 18th to the 24th, at the Metrograph Theater, 4 times a day. That's on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And then after that, it will be on home video, DVD, iTunes, etc.
You have all this memorized. I had it right here for you. So, but
Thank you.
He knows where his film is playing.
I've done this before.
Let's get back a little bit to, and we're going to talk about some of the
Sure.
awards you've received in a little bit, and some very exciting developments about this in terms of Hollywood and a major star. But you told us about the synopsis of the film, and I just have to say, it's for an autism mom who has a son with a train obsession. This brought me to tears at so many times.
Yeah,
It was hard for me. It's disturbing, Adam. It's disturbing, and an example of how our system fails our individuals with ASD.
Yeah, I actually started off making this film as a lighter, quirkier kind of catch me if you can story, where you'd kind of be rooting for the criminal who's duping people and dressing up as other people, and as long as he doesn't hurt anyone, and it's all okay. And then as I got deeper into his story and started testing out early rough cuts of the film on audiences, I found that that kind of got old for them pretty soon, and what they were really drawn to is the critique of the criminal justice system, the tragedy of wasted talent, of a very passionate, brilliant man who has this one topic that he's so good at, and that's the very thing that keeps ruining his life. And so you end up, you know, about a third or halfway into the film realizing, wow, this is really heavy. This is serious. This isn't just some fun, quirky train ride, but a deeper story that, you know, gets people angry.
It really does. And I want to say that, you know, in his early childhood, he had such a loving family. I mean, the father was distant, but the mother loved this little boy with such a passion and so provided for him. And I mean, she talked about how, you know, she did his homework, and she drove him to the best. He had the best grades, and, you know, it looked so hopeful. And then there's a bullying incident that really drives him further into this obsession, right?
Yeah, his family was there. They were loving, and that really is one of the only sort of systems in Darius's life that didn't fail him. And one of the systems that did was the educational system. So Darius was at school one day when he was about 11 years old during one of the worst snowstorms in New York's history. And it was just him and one other student there because no one else could get to school. And this other student literally stabbed Darius in the back with a pair of scissors when he was doing a puzzle and the teacher wasn't looking. And it was very serious. He had a collapsed lung. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and he almost died. And he really was never the same after that, because when he'd come back to school, he had to sit in the back of the class because he didn't want anyone walking behind him. Right. He wouldn't get up to get his homework from the teacher's desk because he was afraid he would get stabbed again. And so he started, you know, making excuses to get out of class, and then he completely just started cutting school and, of course, hanging out in the subway system, because he not only loved the trains, but he found sanctuary in the tunnels and
in the employees
of
the system who thought this little boy was remarkable. This young man was remarkable.
Although exploited him.
Yes, they did.
It worked both ways because he found comfort in these adults who valued him as a person, who were no threat to him physically, and who taught him about the trains to literally drive them. And that, of course, is what ended up turning things around, because they started asking him to drive their shifts and clean the locker room and sweep the token booth and not paying him for it.
Right.
And, you know, when he got caught driving a bus at,
At
know,
age
15 years
15,
old,
right? First time.
he wouldn't give any of their names, so
Right.
he would go to jail and they would get paid. So it was really unfair that they used him.
Well, and again and again and again, we see the system fail him. There's a moment where somebody finally speaks the words about, you know, wouldn't it have been great, wouldn't it still be great if they gave him a job? Because he is showing up doing better work than the people that they're actually paying. And the people in my household, when that was said, everybody went, yes! Like there was a roar that went up, and like, yes! I mean, this is the idea. And then you quickly hear all the reasons why. And I get it. I get that there are always legal issues, but it doesn't make sense what they're doing. They're putting everybody at risk by not giving him a job. I'm, you know, again and again and again, you see ways that this could have been saved, and yet they just keep doing things the way that they've been taught because of the legal system. Well, we must see it this way, and nobody can see past that.
Yeah.
He's brilliant, and he actually, I think one of the, I don't want to give things away, but one of the most disappointing parts of the story for me was when an event happens where there's a real emergency, and he steps up and becomes the reasonable, rational person taking care of people to the point where he's even willing to give himself up in the moment. He's and give up the fact that he, you know, is masquerading as somebody so that no one gets hurt. And he gets one of the biggest punishments for that, and they pin something on him that wasn't his responsibility. I was dying, you know, he's so articulate. He sits at the table
really
and
is.
says, dust the fingerprints on this button and you will see that I never touched it. And that was the one thing in the film that wasn't answered. Did they ever dust that? You don't tell us.
I'm not sure, but I did speak with the assistant DA on the case. He's briefly in the film.
Yeah.
And it was ultimately up to a grand jury, and they felt, given the evidence, given his past record, and given the fact that no one else could have caused this train to trip, it seemed like the most logical explanation is Darius caused an emergency so that he could rescue passengers and be the hero and get them to safety when he in fact had caused the danger. And Darius to this day denies it, and he is so open about bragging about all his other impersonations. So it's odd that if he actually did do this, that he wouldn't just own up to it. So it's one of those things that no one will ever know. And it's a shame that he served a lot of time for it without really
half his
any
life
proof.
he's been in prison.
Yeah.
And he's there now.
Yeah, he's
And
there
you said
now.
you talked to him on the way in the parking lot.
Yeah, he calls me every week, if not more. Sometimes it can be a little much.
I've heard this before about this phenomenon of the filmmaker getting very close with the person, you know, of course, like Truman Capote was, you know, very close with the person in jail. I mean, I'm sure this can lead to sort of a dependent relationship, and I'm sure that you've learned a lot from this relationship about people on the autism spectrum.
Yeah, I did learn a lot. And one of the things I learned is that Darius is not kind of the typical Asperger's type. He makes pretty good eye contact. His sense of humor feels very sophisticated. And there's almost like this charm to him that is not typical of someone who you think of as more just kind of you know, numbers, data, no emotion. And it, you know, revealed to me that there's just a lot of gray area. Not everyone is the same.
You've met one person with ASD. You've met one person with ASD.
Yeah, exactly.
So some exciting stuff coming up. But I do want to ask you this question. Answer it as best you can. What can be done about this situation?
Yeah.
Darius's individual situation, and then what this presents at large. That's a big question. But
yeah.
As the filmmaker, and putting all of these things out there, all of these problems, challenges, broken system, what do you think can be done, Adam?
Not a lot, unfortunately, on an individual level of, let's say, one of your viewers saying, I'm going to watch this movie, and then they see it and they say, what an injustice here, I want to do something. I mean, maybe I'm just jaded, but I feel it's very difficult for an individual working up against a huge system and a huge country with so many, you know, corporate interests and taxpayers' interests to just make a phone call and say, oh, okay, we'll just pass this legislation and we'll set Darius free, give him the therapy he needs, we'll give him a job, and then he'll be a productive member of society, problem solved. It's just not that simple. I think it'll take years and years and years of lobbying and kind of using Darius as an example of the broken system so that other Dariuses can be helped. I think the fundamental problem here is that the criminal justice system puts people in boxes of guilty or innocent, crime, then punishment, and doesn't look at what to do when someone is incarcerated so that when they get out, they won't go back again.
Right.
And they don't have the money, the time, or the resources to do that because the prisons just keep getting more and more backed up. And someone like Darius, who knows what he's doing is wrong, but can't really help himself and has never hurt anyone or damaged any property, I don't think should just be sentenced to maximum security prison for years at a time. It's not helping anyone. So I would say, contact his lawyer, Sally Butler, and, ask her how you can help, and, write a letter to the legislators in the state of New York. And other than that, I would just say get as many people as you can to see Off the Rails so that eventually maybe the judge on Darius's case will see the film or the prosecutor and say, maybe they're not going to want to look like the bad guy after seeing that movie because they'll realize that they're the problem.
Well, there's
and
a
when I
bigger
ask you,
strength.
I'm sorry, when I ask you how things can change, you are part of that change, Adam, by making this film, and it reminds me of a time many, many years ago when I was working in television, and a guy who worked with me said, "My wife is going to be the subject of a movie, and she is going to be played by Julia Roberts." And I said, "Do you know how much your life is about to change?" And that guy was married to a woman named Erin Brockovich.
Yes.
And that movie changed a lot. And I think your film is going to change a lot. And there's some exciting news. Tell us about that.
Well,
involving Julia Roberts.
Yes, 16 years ago, she won the Academy Award for her performance playing Erin Brockovich. And there is going to be a Hollywood movie about Darius's life story, tentatively titled Train Man, that's set to come out next year, and Julia Roberts is slated to play Darius's lawyer. So it's going to be sort of a similar feisty legal defender kind of role for Julia Roberts.
For her.
And that film, to be honest, is going to be way bigger than mine. It's got millions of dollars behind it.
You started it?
Yes, I was the first. And I hope that the combination of Off the Rails and this Julia Roberts film will bring national attention to Darius's case and to other issues at play here. How do we deal with people on the spectrum that have really strong, passions or fixations, and how can they channel that into a productive career? Because a lot of these folks are really perfect for certain jobs, and they're not being recognized because their social skills might be, problematic for some people who are hiring.
Adam, I just want to say you've won so many awards. You won Best Documentary at Woods Hole Film Festival, Best Documentary at DocuTah Film Festival. The list goes on and on and on. There's even talk of Oscar nomination in the documentary category, which we hope to see happen.
Yes.
But it's really because of storytellers like you. And we want to commend you for that. Shannon and I are really, we are in awe of this film.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to watch the trailer, but we're going to do that as we say goodbye to you, because when we come back, we have another special guest. But thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
For being here, and thank you so much for picking this subject to make your film about, because it's really important.
Good luck to you, Adam.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
So let's take a look at the trailer for Off the Rails.
My name is Darius McCullum. Over the years, I have operated trains in the New York City subway system, Metro North, New Jersey Transit, and yet I have never been an employee of any of these agencies.
Well, a Manhattan man is getting a free ride to prison.
And McCollum, said to have an encyclopedic knowledge of all things transit-related.
All of his crimes were victimless. He would safely make all of the stops, make the announcements.
He says, I'm volunteering my time, as if he's a high schooler getting community service hours.
Now, he's been picked up 20 times for the same thing.
McCollum claims to have commandeered more than 100 buses for joyrides over the past 30 years.
McCollum has such a lengthy rap sheet of transit-related crimes, he has his own Wikipedia page.
Because I have Asperger's syndrome, I have trouble making friends. I didn't want to be bullied. I didn't want to be picked on. I didn't want to have to be beaten up.
When he was young, when he was assaulted, he lost that sense of value as to who he is. Wearing a uniform creates a sense of value for Darius.
It was like I was married to the MTA.
He can't help it.
My son, he doesn't belong there because he doesn't hurt anybody.
While he was in jail, he never got any therapy.
There's a possibility that I can definitely die in jail.
He has been stuck in this revolving door for his whole entire life.
He's an individual that corrections doesn't know how to handle, doesn't want to handle, and doesn't have the money or the support to figure it out.
Welcome everybody to our 5K, 10K run and family festival.
So the Act Today for Military Families Run and Festival is a race that benefits military children with autism. So we help a lot of the families around the country whose parents serve in the military.
I'm an autism mom, but also a military wife, and I'm so excited to be here at Act Today's 6th annual run. I've never missed one. It's something that really helps this situation. Is fabulous because there's no other organization like it.
San Diego has some of the highest concentration of military in the country, if not the world. And a lot of my friends are military and are affected by autism disorder. And so for me to do some little thing to the people that protect our freedoms is important.
It's hard enough to parent a kiddo with autism. Can you imagine parenting a child when you move on average every 2 years, you have a parent member deployed or in training? Our kids don't like change. These kids are subject to constant change.
My name's Tom Leahy. I am president of One Hope Wine. We are the title sponsor of the 6th annual Act Today Family Festival. We have been the title sponsor every single year, which we're very proud of. We've worked with Act Today for 9 years, which we are also very proud of.
My name is Megan Martin. I'm a licensed and certified genetic counselor at Lineagen, and we provide genetic testing. Lineagen are strong supporters of all families with autism, but particularly families in the military.
Connor. I am in the United States Navy stationed here at Navy Information Operations Command, San Diego. I am a first-class petty officer and been here for 3 years so far. This event is important to me. Growing up in a family, my baby sister has Down syndrome, and just living through that and being 17 years older than she is, understand the importance of family, understand the importance of how everybody is important to what we do here, not only in our country, but what we do throughout the world.
Here we go. First place with a time of 46
inside the 10K. Here comes some more finishers.
Hello, fellow activists. In our last segment, we talked about step number 2, educate yourself. Step number 3 is get support. Now, any journey can feel overwhelming if you feel like you're walking it alone. Well, you're far from alone, because with 1 in 50 kids diagnosed with autism today, there are a lot of us out there. Of course, there's always the issue of financial support. Now, there's a handful of organizations out there that offer financial support to families in need. ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, is one of them. Visit our website at www.act-today.org to find out more about our grant process. I want to talk about a different kind of support today, emotional support. Now, you can get that from other travelers on this path. Some of the best advice I've ever received is from the moms of other kids with autism who went to school with Wyatt or were involved with programs with him. Then there are the pioneers. These are the families that have gone through this years ago, and there was very little information out there. All of these people seem to have the desire to pay it forward. Now, one of them, Lisa Ackerman, who is one of my mentors, started an organization called TACA, Talk About Curing Autism. She actually took the concept of mentors and support groups and made it available to everybody. You can go to their website, talkaboutcuringautism.org, to find out more. During the first and most difficult year after Wyatt's diagnosis, I wrote an email to close family and friends, letting them know what was going on and the challenges our family was facing, and why we dropped out of sight. I was amazed at the outpouring of love and affection and all the help I received from that email. First, you have to be vulnerable. You can't be afraid to ask. Try this out. Could you cook me a meal? Are you going to the market? Can you pick me up a few things? Could your kids play with my kid and make them feel included? Or can you come over and clean my house? Well, maybe not that last one, except with your best friend. And maybe the best support of all is having someone that listens, and that doesn't cost a dime. So until next time, surround yourself with the loving kindness of others and keep the faith.
Parent to parent, sometimes our kids will engage in certain behaviors that really seem random to us. We have no idea why they're doing it. It's really important to remember that all behaviors happen for a reason. And in fact, challenging behaviors happen for 4 reasons more often than any other reasons. The 4 reasons are attention. A lot of times our kids do things to get attention, and remember, negative attention counts. Another reason why our kids do things is to escape someone or something. A third thing is to gain access to someone or something. And the 4th reason is because it just feels good. So the next time your child is engaging in a behavior that seems random or strange or totally from outer space, stop and ask yourself which one of these 4 things might be causing it. Is it attention? Might it be to escape something? Is it to gain access to someone or something? Or is it that it just feels good? Knowing why the behavior happens helps us to deal with it. What is this ABA treatment I keep hearing everyone talk about? Welcome back.
Welcome back.
We were scheduled to have a wonderful guest that was going to be with us, and we're having some technical issues, so we're going to reschedule. But you know, there's always a blessing in these things because of the time change and the confusion with the time change. We were having Marguerite Ellefson, and we don't know whether we're
Ellefson.
And she's the author of My Picture Perfect Family. She was going to be on and talking about that with us. But also we were going to have her daughter, Samantha, on as well. And Samantha is on the spectrum. Marguerite had 2 children. She had twins. And in a very interesting twist of fate, it was her daughter who ended up being on the spectrum. And her daughter, Samantha, recently graduated from Pace University and is a very accomplished young woman, and is part of a theater company that we definitely want to talk.
Yeah.
And because of the time change, we weren't going to be able to have Samantha on anyway today.
So
We were going to have her on. So we'll have them
her in
both
the
on
future,
another day.
yeah, because
and our apologies.
She, navigated this life before internet and support groups existed. So I don't know how she did it. I
She's a wonderful
want to hear
resource,
it.
and she also is available to consult with other families. So we definitely want to have them both on. So we will reschedule that. And plus, we've had so many questions that have come in, and of course my phone just chimped on me, but here we go. So I want to, this was a question that came in while we were talking to Evelyn Kung. Somebody said, hello Shannon and Dr. Doreen and Evelyn. First of all, I want to thank you guys for this wonderful idea and want to express my admiration for your work. Oh, that's the one for the question, the grocery store, which we're saving for next week. This one. Hello, Shannon and Dr. Doreen, West Virginia mom here. She's a regular that we love on the show. My daughter's preschool teacher expressed concerns with me about her OT provider. Evidently, she is COTA, C-O-T-A. So she's an assistant, and I knew you were going to ask me, and I can't remember off the top of my head.
You know everything.
I don't, though. I don't remember things like that. It's alphabet land, but
it's certified something.
For occupational therapy assistant, I think is what it is. So she's an assistant who is still being supervised and trained. My daughter is expressing such severe anxiety while with this lady that she's chewing holes in her clothing, having meltdowns after going to OT, etc. I had a meeting with the COTA and the supervisor, and they said that for some reason, my daughter just doesn't like her. My daughter said she gets mad when I write my letters, and my daughter has a significant fine motor delay and severe sensory processing issues. Should I just request a new OT? Or I also have the option of going into her therapy session weekly and being present. I was wondering why she always has severe meltdowns, Thursdays and Fridays only. These are when she's having consistent self-injurious behavior meltdowns for at least an hour.
Okay. You want to go first, or you want me to put my input?
And she says, could this be related? And thank you, and we all love you. Do we want to go together at the same time? Because I have a feeling we're going to say that you go first.
Well, first of all,
and I'll just nod my head.
Okay. The reaction your daughter is having to OT, this occupational therapist, is telling you something. She's communicating to you with these meltdowns. Something is terribly wrong here. And if she's indicated to you that that the OT gets mad when she doesn't do her letters. This should not be occurring. This should be a supportive situation. This should be helping you and giving her skills. Now, some frustration might occur in sessions when a child is being challenged to do better or to do more skills.
Yeah, or a non-preferred skill.
A non-preferred skill. Of course, you're going to see some reactions, right, Shannon?
You ask me to do taxes, and I'm going to throw tantrums.
Right. And for example, my son Wyatt doesn't like it when a certain therapist is coming because he knows he's going to be demanded a lot during that session, but nothing to the degree of this kind of
self-injurious behavior right afterwards. Big indicator.
So I would say, first of all, absolutely go sit in on sessions and see for yourself.
Yeah.
And then based on that, decide.
And
what do you think?
I agree. I think that that's the fair thing to do, but there's a little part of me that wants to say to all of us that you got to use your gut at some point, and if the behavior is so bad that I think that if it's really bad, it doesn't matter what the reason is. Let's not torture the child. If there's some inexplicable reason why she doesn't like this man, then let's not force her to. And if that's a card that you only use once in a while, then that's a card that you only use once in a while. You can't be doing that all the time and saying, well, they just don't get along with this therapist.
Yeah, and they get out of it, because that can be also a behavior that happens to get out of therapy.
Absolutely.
But you seem to be indicating this only happens on the 2 days a week that she has this OT. So that tells me that your daughter is not reacting to other forms of therapy or education
And
or
look,
anything.
Here's the thing, it could be as simple. I know, sometimes our imaginations go to the worst possible thing. It could be as simple as this woman wears a perfume that just doesn't work well with her, but it doesn't matter. This is what I mean, is that, and she could change the perfume now, but the child has this sense memory of it, and it's not going to be saved. It's not going to be productive. And the question that we didn't answer was about behavior in a grocery store. And it's funny, as we started thinking about this, and talking about this, Jem always had this massive meltdown in one particular grocery store that we would go in, and at one point in the store. And I couldn't figure out what it was, and I talk about this all the time. Later on, we had a BCBA come in and observe, and they said, oh, it's the point where the floor changes from this very slick surface that's shiny to a tiled floor. And does he have reactions around other tiled floor? And of course, in the moment I said, no, I don't think so. But then I started thinking, oh, every time we go on a tiled floor, my child freaks out. So it isn't always something that's like, it may not even be that this woman is a horrible OT, right?
Right.
Or she could have easily made a simple, silly mistake in the beginning, but now the repair on it would be really, really hard.
Right.
So change her, is my advice.
I agree.
Maybe go in and look once. But if it's self-injurious behavior, I feel like change her.
Yeah.
Because our kids have to learn, and they're not going to learn if the communication is that big. They're not going to learn. We got 8 minutes left. Okay, so here's one. Hi, Shannon. Thank you so much for this show. You probably have no idea how much you're helping us, and we appreciate that so much. And they said, hi, Dr. Doreen and Evelyn Kung. I'm a mom from India, and I have a 13-year-old on the spectrum. I use Skills Global and had a skills consultant for nearly 2 years, before 2 years, and it was extremely helpful with sleep and other issues. I am now having new anxiety about stimming issue going on during eating with my son and would like to have a professional help with this. Is it possible to have a consultant for this issue, and how do I get started with this? And thank you so much. And okay, so 2 things that I want to tell you guys about. First of all, on tomorrow's show, it's so timely that you wrote in about this. We are having on the program at 10:20, we have an expert who's going to be with us talking about something called card telehealth. I wish that I had one of those buttons that I could cue like the applause right there. Card telehealth. For those of you who, first of all, there is some support with Skills, and I'm going to give you the phone number for that, where you can call and get somebody to help you if you're just using Skills. But if you need even more help than that, then you can move over to Card Telehealth and use that in conjunction with Skills. So first of all, the phone number for Skills, 877-975-4559. And Robin Hogerhuis, who we've had on the show, is the person who you will get when you call there, or her assistant. And she's great to help with some issues, but if you feel that it goes beyond that, you're going to make sure that you're going to watch the show tomorrow at 10:20 when we're going to talk about card telehealth. For those of you all around the world who just need more help and support, they've got it set up. We're going to give specifics about that, but you can send videos, they can Skype with you, and it can be like a clinic. It's all legal now, even places in the United States where you don't, if you're in rural, that's a hard word for me to say, rural areas, you can be using card telehealth.
Okay.
So on the show tomorrow. Okay. Another person who said virtual hugs, Shannon, I love that. Thanks for staying strong for us, and just hearing Evelyn's positive voice and messages, good for the soul, and bless you both for all that you do. Okay, we talked a lot about card for adults,
right,
Evelyn?
Right.
And somebody wrote in and said, do the adults seek out card themselves, and how do we teach our aging kids to seek help when needed?
Okay.
And sometimes, it's a great question, sometimes adults will ask for help and support. And sometimes they will ask for card help and support by name because they've gone to an event and they've met somebody from card, or they went to an open house. So sometimes they do. But I think that is not the norm. I think that more often than not, it is somebody who knows the adult and who recommends that they come to CARD, and sometimes it's the family. But a lot of times it's a caseworker that is not the family, or somebody at a site that they're working says, hey, did you know? Because the problem is that families would ask for it, but for so long they got told, no, there's nothing. There's nothing available. So, you know, one of the things, if you're working with a CARD adult program, they have a whole program for teaching them to ask for help and support in a lot of different ways, so that it, again, generalizes to everything. Do they ever, I know at one point Jem had a lesson where he had to ask for help in all these different situations. Have they done that with Wyatt?
They've done some of that, yes.
Really, really helpful. I'm sorry, how much time do we have, Samantha?
4 minutes.
4 minutes, okay. Somebody said I was hilarious because I told them the story of something that happened with Jem earlier this year. Thank you so much for answering questions. Your funny story. I really love that autism and laughter can be in the same conversation.
Absolutely. If you're dead, if they aren't sometimes.
Oh my gosh!
Please,
I mean,
you should hear us laugh together.
You know, the conversations that we have about so many things, and that sometimes one of us will just say something,
and she'll say something sometimes, and I will just be on the floor. You can hear me through the walls.
You know, and honestly, because we have been through some poo in the last year, right?
Oh yeah.
Both the real and the figurative poo, and there are times when something will happen and one of us will just say something, and just the sheer reality of it, the two of us will crack up and laugh hysterically and go, oh, this is
remember
horrifying.
to laugh. You know, they say remember to breathe. I think remember to laugh is one of the most important things, because I forget. I just get so down that rabbit hole of stress that, you know, I need that laughter.
And it's important to have people in your life that you
laugh,
can
right?
laugh,
Yeah.
and that will laugh with you,
Right.
and give that to you, and that can't always. I mean, there are times that my husband and I laugh about things, but there are times when I need to laugh about him with you, right? and there are times when you need somebody that you can tell just the sheer horrible truth to, right?
Oh yeah.
And so make sure that you've got that in your life. And if you don't have it yet, there are support groups that are face-to-face support groups, but there are also online support groups. Make sure that you've got someone.
Don't isolate. Find somebody to laugh with and to cry with.
I'm a great isolator when things get really bad.
I am too, but I always turn to you.
Well, and you know, it's
you
interesting.
See that panic look in my face. I come in, I look inside your office, and you're like, you need help.
But I don't think you realize, and I don't tell you enough, that like you called me on Monday because you were like, all right, what's going on? I haven't heard from you in days. What's going on?
You were dizzy with something at gym school in the morning, but she hadn't felt well over the weekend.
But she kind of, keeps me reeled in, so that if I go to isolate, I couldn't, because she would be like, all right, what's going on? What's happening?
You do the same for me. So.
Absolutely. So, and that's a really important thing.
Us Lucys need our Ethels, and us Ethels need our Lucys.
You know, and it's amazing to me that we haven't done something that we could be arrested for yet. That's all I have to say, because I have a feeling
I almost got us arrested. Wasn't I gonna spill our blood on the Capitol steps once?
You know, whenever I say to, we've got 1 minute left, but whenever I say to Nancy, all right, we need to do something because we need to get some attention. That, yes, she wanted me to climb the side of a building and spill our blood on the building. That was her first go-to. Okay. And then the next one was that she wanted to go to the Capitol. I was like, let's get T-shirts made that have pictures of all these kids. And she was like, no, let's go topless. And she said, you can stand and hold the pictures of the kids, and I'll run around the Capitol until I drop and they have to call an ambulance. And that was plan B, you guys. Right? And you know what we arrived at? We wrote CAN on our heads, which stood for something about insurance for autism, but I don't know why it was C. That escapes me now. That we
Comprehensive autism insurance.
We can do it now. So we wrote blue letters on our forehead and had the news crews
and did that all
instead of spilling blood
and running around topless.
Yeah, that's all
I
I'm
thought
saying.
running around topless, but there's
Plan
enough violence on
Plan
television.
B, and Plan C. We're out of time. But let me just tell you about tomorrow's show, because it's so exciting. So first we're going to talk about CARD telehealth. Then we have Bonnie Yates, special education attorney, that's going to be answering legal questions. And then we have Alex Plank on the the show talking about so many things, but in particular, this new mission statement for Autism Speaks and his take on it, because I think it's important to get autism parents' opinion, but you know, we need to get the
Those on the
opinions of those on the
spectrum. Let's hear it
Nothing
from
about
them.
us without us. So Alex is a lot of times
Great.
my litmus.
Yes,
You know,
great to hear
run
from
things
him.
by him.
Okay.
Okay, so we're out of time. Thank you for being here.
Thank
Wonderful
you for
guest.
having
And
me.
we
Wow,
will-
I was so inspired today, really, truly.
Well, we'll reconnect with Marguerite and her daughter Samantha
Yes.
on a
We didn't have
future
time
show.
anyway.
We didn't have
Perfect.
time.
Works
Too many
out.
things to do. But thank you
Okay.
guys all for being with us. We're totally out of time. I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And yourselves a hug from me.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.